Welcome to the Get Published podcast, sponsored by Brodie Consulting Group. To get more information about our coaching, publishing, executive ghostwriting, and podcast production services, go to getpublishedpodcast.com. Hello, I am Paul Brodie, and thank you for joining us for another episode of the Get Published podcast, where we help authors get published with a proven system that works. And today, we're being joined by Jason Wright, author of Push Play, Taking Your Life Off Pause. Jason, welcome to the show.
Hi, Paul. It's great to be with you.
We are thrilled to have you. Are you ready to begin?
Let's do it.
All right. Question number 1. What is the one piece of advice that you would give to a first-time author who is currently writing their book?
Unless you are prepared to market your book 24/7, constantly, nonstop, doing whatever it takes to get your book into as many people's hands as possible, don't even try it. You have to be willing to work to push your book because no one else is going to. That would be the best advice I could give. I mean, it's an entrepreneurial venture. You've got to be the one to really push and market the product. Unless you're an A-list celebrity or someone or a former president, you're going to have to get people excited about your product.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the things people don't realize. It's not one of those things where you just put your book out there and you're going to be on Ellen next week. I mean, you've got to push it, and especially those that are looking to utilize this book as the foundation of their business and their brand. I mean, it's just like anything else. It's not just a book. It's a product. It is a lead magnet. It is a lead generation tool, and it is to help build your business and brand. But with that, you've got to be out there talking about it.
Absolutely, Paul, you just nailed it. It's understanding what your book is. It is a tool to leverage for other forms of networking, for leads. The chances, especially like if you write in the nonfiction space like I do, if you're writing a fictional book, you're probably not going to be the next, author of 50 Shades of Grey, which was just something that got put out there and went crazy, or The Shack or something like that. You're going to have to work, and just remember, it is just a small piece of what should be, if you're doing it right, a greater ecosystem for your personal brand.
Well, what do you feel is the hardest part about getting published?
Well, right now, the thing is, it's not all that hard. It's become so much easier. I published my first book about 10 years ago. And then it was cost prohibitive. It cost a lot of money, even if you were self-publishing. You had to get so many copies produced, which is usually going to be at least 1,000 run minimum to get some actual copies in people's hands. And it was just more expensive. You have to hire an editor. But now Amazon has done a really good job of making it affordable. I'd say the biggest challenge is understanding how to go through the process, which, if you're willing to put in the work and do the due diligence, follow shows like yours, listen to, podcasts like what you're offering to get those tips and tricks. There's a lot of self-education available, but you just got to learn the process. And once you get it, I would say the barriers seem to come down a little lower each and every year.
Well, let's talk about marketing. So please share a marketing strategy that you have used in your book launch that has worked well.
Yeah, so doing exactly what you're doing, create a podcast. Again, a podcast is not rocket science. It is a crowded field right now, but you know what? Like Kevin Kelly says, you need 1,000 fans. You need 1,000 true fans. And so if you can start a podcast, if you can go speak to Rotary clubs, if you can just get in front of an audience in each and every way possible, then that's what you need to do. It's just guerrilla marketing. And, so here's the deal, too. And so people say, well, if I start a podcast, what if I only have 100 listeners, 100 downloads? Well, think of the last time, and this to your listener, think of the last time you were in a room with 100 people as a captive audience. Probably it's been a while if you're a new author who's never been before an audience. So there you go. That's how you do it. And then it's telling friends and family and every single person that do not take any for granted what you're doing, why you're doing it, and ask them for help. Be okay with going, hey, I'm trying to put something out there. This is what I'm trying to do. Will you join me in my work and get behind me? And you'd be amazed at how supportive that internal fan base can really be to your efforts.
So essentially what you're talking about is building an engaged audience, which I think is going to be the hook for this show. So once you get them, how are you keeping them engaged? I mean, I know we're talking about like podcast episodes and things, but what are some specific strategies that you're utilizing for that engagement, Jason?
Yeah, so first of all, I'm going to create, like I've got a Vitruvian letter. I created a newsletter. You got to know who your audience is. Who are you writing to? And you better decide that. You know, that's kind of, I probably should have spoke to that a little earlier, Paul. You got to know who your audience is, and your audience should be there needs to be a product out there, a book that you're writing that doesn't exist that you would read. Don't try to write a book for the masses. You will fail miserably. Write a book you would read. And then once that audience comes about, start a Facebook group that you discuss topics that you mention in the book. Start a blog. Take your book chapter by chapter and use either segments, paragraphs from the book or the chapters themselves and turn those into blog entries. Imagine if someone reads your blog that you can mass disseminate. They see, they go, I like this. And you're going to put all the contact information where they can get your book, that you are an author, and then that one blog turns into the sale of an entire book. And vice versa. You have to be able to repurpose your writing every chance you get. On the podcast, take topics from your book. Make that the topic of a podcast episode. Go talk to an expert on something you've written a chapter about. And then all of a sudden, that person that you're talking to will probably talk about your book. So you've got to be able to cross-leverage those things. And that's what I've done. I've got a newsletter. I've got Facebook groups. I have a podcast. I have a blog. I'm willing, you have a very, very impressive system that you've set up, Paul, with this podcast and how you can get on here. So I'm like, well, there's an opportunity to go speak to an audience trying to do what I'm doing. So leverage those opportunities every single chance you get.
Well, speaking of books, I'd like to know what is your favorite book and what was the number one thing that you learned from it?
My favorite book, gosh, and it's like asking what's your favorite ice cream flavor. So this was a tough one for me, but I would have to say it's Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. And anyone, I won't go into everything that, Man's Search for Meaning is about, but essentially, Viktor Frankl was in a concentration camp during World War II. And my biggest takeaway is understand your why. If you have a big enough why for what you're doing, why you're writing a book, the message that you're trying to convey, why are you trying to convey that message? If the why is big enough, you will overcome almost each and every how. The pain of not achieving what you want to achieve has to be greater than any barrier that gets between you and overcoming whatever obstacle it is standing between you and achieving that goal and that ambition. And I think that, the fact that it's a true nonfiction story of someone who overcame some horrendous odds like Viktor Frankl did, I think that's why it had such an impact on me.
And for our final question, what is your favorite quote and why?
My favorite quote would have to be "Man conquers the world by conquering himself," which is a quote by the father of Stoicism, Zeno. And the reason why is because I think there's a lot of people out there that want to change the world, and we all have a world that exists between our two ears. And if we can get that one the way we want it first, and then let the fruit from those efforts spill over, then you got a shot at changing that external world. So that's why.
Jason, I want to thank you for being a guest on the show. What is the best way for people to find you online?
JasonWrightNow.com. Please check me out there. All my contact information, you can find me there. And I'd love to hear from you. And whenever you go there, you'll be prompted to sign up for the Vitruvian letter. That's my personal newsletter. And I'd be very, very grateful for anyone who is within an earshot to check it out.
Jason, thank you once again for being on the show, and I wish you all the best in your author journey ahead.
Thanks, Paul. Appreciate what you're doing.
Thanks again for joining us today. To learn more about how to get your book published with a proven system that works, grab a free copy of my book at getpublishedpodcast.com.